Okay, the recording is started and we are already 2 minutes past 8, so we need to be Swiss precise. And welcome everyone, welcome Amani AlThuwaini, and thanks for taking the time to partake this public conversation with us tonight. For those ones who do not know me, my name is Claudio Cravero. Under my label of Sheikh Abdullah Sami Cultural Center is also my name. And as a curator of the Fine Arts Center at the Sheikh Abdullah Sami Center, I'm delighted tonight to moderate this third talk of the second season of the Virtual Artist Talk series. When we started and we launched the Artist Talk series, the spotlight has been on previous and current artists of the Artist and Residency Program promoted by the Sheikh Abdullah Sami Cultural Center that Amani partook with us in 2019 for almost a complete year. With Amani tonight, we're gonna discuss her art practice from her residency program at the center to her research-based business that we decided to summarize for tonight's talk with the title Aesthetics of Celebration. And we're gonna face and deal with this topic, and also why we decided to have this title, because it's an aesthetics of what we celebrate in Kuwait, and in particular some of the rituals that are still related to the traditional Kuwaiti way how to celebrate and to gather together for special occasions that I'm not gonna spoil now, we will see later. So far, since very much promising. And before introducing Amani and passing the mic on to her, we know that more or less the talk is going to last approximately 40 minutes, while the first 30 minutes will see Amani and myself in conversation. The last 10 minutes will be dedicated to your questions. So please use the chat or send your questions, or if you are not shy, just unmute yourself during the Q&A at the end. Very short bio about Amani, because then we're gonna delve into her practice and her living matter when she works as an entrepreneur and as an artist. She was born in 1989, and she has a double background, Kuwaiti from her father and Ukrainian from her mother's side. She's also an MFA graduate at London's Goldsmiths University with a thesis on contemporary Kuwaiti dowry vessels, where she analyzed the lack of craft, functionality, and personalization of the bride's traditional gift here in Kuwait. Amani has been exploring these topics since then as part of her research and within her business as well. So Amani, let's get started. From the year program in 2018 and the exhibition in Venice that got organized to represent the center in such an international venue, could you please guide us through your journey out of the year program at the center and the establishment afterwards of your own business that is named Daza Lab?
First of all, hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in. So yes, after the program, actually during the program, I already started working on the business, and it was just in the beginning stages at the time. But then it got busier and busier. And so right after finishing the program, I actually got myself a studio space and an office space for my clients, and so yeah, the business started, and it's became a really like a big part of my daily life. And so yeah, I can introduce what I do in a minute.
Sure.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the research first?
Yes, I will go directly why your main focus of your research has been on the dowry, which started, as we said before, when you were at the London College Goldsmith, and you also compiled all your research and practice within your thesis, and then the way that you decided to really deeper down that research in a more, let's say, compelling way and in a practical way to somehow, let's say, disrupt the tradition and the new habits, social habits that people in Kuwait have towards the Daza. Then we're going to explain what it is.
Yeah, so it's actually started from my own curiosities about dowry as a tradition. When I received my own dowry, when I first got married, and that was the starting point. And then when I went to do my MFA, I started discussing this more in depth and researching more about human behaviors, like the perceptions of luxury and value in terms of what is sent to the bride before the actual signing for the marriage. And it was very interesting for me. So I was fulfilling my own curiosities, and then it became like a whole topic of discussion, and it turned into the MFA graduation exhibition. And so it's important to think about the dowry because it marks an important moment in history. So it documents different histories in terms of like trade, the social setups of dowries, how people interact with each other, the connection between people and objects. It's very, very important to think about those things because they change throughout time. And maybe I can like share the screen now.
We need to, especially for people who are not familiar with Kuwaiti culture, that Daza is the Arabic name for the dowry, so the chest, the vessel that is donated.
Yes. So the dowry is the mahar, so it's the money given from the groom's family to the bride's family before getting married. And in the early stages of dowry, it was just the money put in a small piece of fabric and given to the bride. And then it's transformed to becoming a bundle of fabric that is put on the head of like the mother of the groom, and then she would walk to the bride's house. It was very ceremonial. And then it's also affected by the trade. So during the time where boats were being built in Kuwait and the trade with India, the wooden chests were part of the zeh. And then with the international trade and the introduction to different materials, it started also transforming and getting also bigger. Every time there was an introduction to a new element. And this was in around 2014. So it was an even bigger chest. This was almost my height. And part of my research was looking at these businesses and how they were designing, serving customers, and why were specific forms used during this event. These are some of the sketches this guy was showing me. And then for me, what was interesting was mass production and how these pieces lacked personalization. And then also, it's interesting that it's discarded after the event. So it doesn't really have value, but the gifts are taken out, and the vessel itself is not of value. So for me, this is a little bit of a waste. And also, so for me, I was asking myself, how could this be a piece of value, and how, so I started with a critique through the artwork in the form of installation. These are some of the businesses. You can see the transformation. So I interviewed a lot of people, and they were telling me that they, after the event, the brides, I mean, after the event, they just keep those pieces in their basement or just throw them out. So these are different forms with different symbolic meanings. And after finishing my MFA thesis and discussing some of these topics, I wanted to actually intervene and start something that I wanted to see change in this setup. So so I started some designs, and then I wanted the piece to actually be reused after the event. So I thought about, what if it's a furniture piece? that can be reused and then stacked together. So these were some of the sketches I used, and then lots of prototyping and trial and error, and then I came up with this first ضيفة. So for me, what was important is that the whole setup is not only about the international goods and like the luxury brands, but also has an element of the handmade, the crafted, the locally made, the personalized. So for me, those were interesting and important points to look at. And for me, the goal is towards something that combines more my artwork together with the objects of ضيفة. So these were part of my research during the V&A designers workshop in 2019, and so this is kind of my goal, is to intertwine both the art practice with the business. So this is where I see myself going in the future, and there are endless possibilities on how this can be done. So I stop sharing now. Okay.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And then in this short history of the evolution of the daza, the dowry, is very much, it's spellbounding. The fact that it started like a bundle, a bag of money that was actually the gift to the bride, and then it turned out to be something completely different, to be a piece of furniture, and but still related to the trade, as you brilliantly mentioned. And that happened in a very short time, because the first example that you showed us is still ambiguous. The data that we can associate it and attribute it to it, but it was like mostly the 30s of the last century, or eventually the 50s, still unknown. But that's the starting point. And it's also very fascinating that you got captivated by this topic on a personal level, because you were getting married and you were questioning yourself towards that object, the preciousness of that object, which is the dowry. And then if I well understood, in Kuwait, the dowry has become a consumer product that got influenced by Western luxury brands like Gucci, Chanel, and so on. We've seen that the cultural and social approach to the marital dowry that has shifted, in particular after the Gulf War in the early 90s, which marked a sort of watershed in the history of the Kuwaiti customs habits towards those objects. In fact, with the boom of the oil industry, people started traveling way more than they used to, and the European commodities and brands became the most desirable objects to import to Kuwait. Getting to your practice, you try, as you said, to bring back the preciousness of the gift, which is sort of sacred and halo behind it, but to take a certain distance from the product itself as a result of our consumer society. How would you discern a gift from a product? What's the difference between something that is considered a gift and a product on the other side?
So I don't know if you're familiar with Marcel Mauss' The Gift. I think it's a really important book in relation to this topic, and for me, and as described in the book as well, the gift is something that is mysterious, something that is in the unknown, and something in the handmade, you know. So it is in the surprise. It has a surprise element. As for the product, it is something that is commonly consumed, it is commonly used, it is everybody's possession. So it is interesting to differentiate, because my goal is to go more towards the gift and not just highlight the product, the international luxury goods.
So you try to intertwine and merge the two aspects, because the product is inevitable within the gift that you are preparing. But what you create all around is this halo of preciousness and uniqueness, the mystery behind the gift, which makes it, as we said, unique. So you create installation-based works that are both part of your art making as an artist, but at the same time, you produce, and I'm going to use this wordplay, produce products that are part of your business. Where and when does your art end and your business begin, or vice versa?
So for me, the art is about the documentation of these events, and it's for to create a discussion with the audience. So the artwork is to kind of trigger this critique element. And for the business, it is a product that I'm going to sell. It is the change I want to see in the world, that they say, you know?
That's very well put. Awesome. So it's this integration, but also it's a shaking somehow the social habits in Kuwait to be so into something that is ready to use, ready to wear, like a product or like a perfume or a piece of jewelry, but into the other side, which is actually the sacred atmosphere behind it. So, diving into your work, the pieces that you kindly donated to the center, whose title is Staged, you investigate and depict the cultural and social behaviors behind Kuwait typical wedding. Would you walk us through your composition, how you created it, and the story that you would like people to take away?
Okay, so I will share the screen again. Okay, so it started with the creation of artwork, specifically this installation, about the dowry itself and talking about the different histories. And this is a very symbolic piece that that says that tradition is now intertwined with modernism. So you can see the Chanel bag with the Sedu combined together, and so the pieces were discussed in the context of London. But then bringing the work back to Kuwait, it was completely different. And for me, it's kind of, people wanted more because they're already aware of the tradition itself. So they know about the dazza, they know about these elements. So so I needed to tell them more about what how I wanted to reflect on it. So I thought it would be interesting to narrate my ideas in a different form. So I was thinking of adding the human elements in my narrative. And the inspiration, this piece was actually created in the center in the air program. And the inspiration was the Islamic miniature. This piece was, what inspired me was the flattened perspective and how it was narrated. So you can see different parts of the story happening at the same time, or you could interpret them the way you want. Yeah, so it was translated into this sketch. I was thinking about the scene of the wedding. So I was working on some sketches, and then I created a collage. The images were taken from different social platforms and some YouTube videos, some Kuwaiti soap operas. And so after this collage, I created this tracing here. And this was kind of the final structure of the artwork. And obviously it turned into this piece. So this was embroidery fabric and wrapped around wood. So what I wanted to create in this piece is a play and an inverse of the roles who is important. So that was one element that I was thinking about. Like, for example, people who are working in the wedding and people who are behind the scenes in the wedding are in gold, and then the guests are all in black and white. Another thing for me was to highlight this dance floor as a place to display luxury. And so going scene by scene, this is the scene where the guest is arriving and the valet parking guys are expecting her. And then this is the scene of the bride. So you can see it on the right, top right. The bride is getting ready. The team is doing her hair and makeup, and then showing some context from Kuwait, from Kuwaiti landscapes. And then this is a guest arriving, the elevator is opening, and then there are people serving drinks and snacks. And this is the dance floor with the bride here. And there is a singer. So you can see some details from the embroidery itself. These are people dancing. And this is the last part, which is the bottom part. So here I'm inviting the viewer to kind of observe, to be part of this scene. So the ladies here are enjoying themselves, taking some Snapchat videos and doing the foot dance, if you know what I mean. And then, yeah, this is another section. So for me, it's important to highlight the behind the scenes, and this was part of my research. I can show some seconds of the video. So these people are important in the creation of the, in the creation of a fairy tale. So yeah.
Yes, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to staged and see the composition overall, so we can have a better look at how you built it, because there is a narrative. It's like a very much similar way how to create a storyboard for a movie or a narrative, because you start from the top. We have the arrival of the bride and the helpers coming into play to help her, and then the bride getting help. I mean, she's getting some help to get dressed. And finally, on the two stripes that we have on the bottom, we have the entire runway, the catwalk, and the dance floor, where actually the female part of this wedding is celebrating the bride, the spouse. What strikes my attention, because it's that the first inspiration was the Islamic miniature drawing that you showed us before, where the composition was more or less the same. But what I noticed that you introduced very cleverly is also a cinematic eye with this long take of the sequence coming at the same time. Like our eyes are moving in front of your, just while we are gazing at the composition from left to right and from right to left, like a real long take in cinema. And you said that all is about embroidery, it's made of textile, we saw the little beads. At the same time, you decided to use the gold color to emphasize those people that normally are, let's say, hidden, or they are overshadowed compared to the importance of the wedding, but they are the real pillars of the wedding, because without them, the wedding will never take place. Is that in that way, using the color gold, but also the embroidery around with the beads, a sort of social critique about the classes and the division of classes that Kuwait, like many other countries in the Gulf, and not only the Gulf, are actually facing?
So for me, the process of art making and the installation work that I make mainly questions these social behaviors, and it's kind of a way for me to reflect back on specific things. So yes, it's definitely talking about social class and how also luxury is connected to discrimination a lot of times. So yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, I said it's a sort of social critique, but it's more about what you emphasized in the beginning, that your work is based on, your research is based on documentation. So this is exactly like an eye observing what's going on. We know a particular social critique about what the classes, in the way the classes are divided, or if there is a watershed between different categories. That's really fascinating, and we are so glad that at the center we got donated this tiny, tiny in the sense that was requiring so much work to get to this result. And thank you for this donation. Moving to another more social topic, since we started this conversation in the last question, besides weddings, are there any other family celebrations and rituals in Kuwait that you find that have drastically changed, especially in Kuwait?
So yes, another thing that I personally lived as well was the baby reception. So yes, it changed drastically and became an event of its own. And it's interesting because it's more about the identity of the person hosting this event and less about the baby. So it's really interesting. And this is actually the topic of my next art installation that I'm currently working on.
Okay, so baby receptions that, as you said, are more events on its own, more than the attention that is being paid to the babies, so the celebrants. It's also true that since your creations definitely go hand in hand with luxury and fashion, how social media are interfering or influencing your work? So in a nutshell, are social media more an enemy and a competitor of yours, or an ally?
No, I think it's definitely an ally. So I think it's very important to look at social media, and it was actually part of the making of this piece. As you can see, it was part of the collage. So and especially now during the pandemic, it was an important part to connect also with other artists and to know what's happening and find out ways to be creative online as well. So it is very important.
So that's the positive side of social media, to get connected and getting inspired. So it's more like an ally. But you also told me that there is a counter effect, or as a side effect of the social media. People coming, collectors and clients coming to you saying, I want to get a dowry, but I want this one. So they come already to your place, your lab, with their end in mind, because they want to have a replica. That's kind of positive, constructive, or you can work it out directly with the client.
Okay, so yeah, this is a challenge actually that I face in my business every day, because people come to me and they want a copy of something on my Instagram page, and it is against the whole purpose of the personalization fact and the against mass production. So for me, I always say, no, we need to combine different elements. If you like an element from this one and that one, then we can combine them to create something new. But two brides should never have the same dowry.
It's true, it's true. I wanted to go to, since we are like almost wrapping up with the last two questions, I would like to get, if you don't mind, to a more personal level, since you said that you are a mom of two, and we just got to know that your baby's names are Adam and Maria, now babysat by someone else for you to be able to partake this moment with us. I wanted to ask you, how could you manage both being an artist, working as an entrepreneur, running your Daza lab, and be a mom? And how becoming a mom has changed and enriched your art making and sensitivity?
So it's definitely a challenge. It's not easy. Two babies in 3 years. So, but I mean, it taught me a lot, and it made me prioritize. So the main thing is priorities, and making sure that I reach my goals, even if it means 10 minutes a day for my art practice, or reflecting back on some of my artwork. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be long periods of time daily, but it's about consistency and focus and prioritizing what I really want. So yeah, it taught me a lot, and it's all good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations, because you're juggling all the time. You're a real multi-tasking person in that sense. So my last question for you is, again, a tiny bit personal, but it goes to the point that it's very surprising that it's kind of rare for you to talk about your own identity. While on another side, when you think about contemporary art, especially for artists that were born in different countries or from different backgrounds, to talk about identity. So they will become kind of natural path to follow and to investigate. In your case, this is not something that has never happened before. And at some point, it seems that your Kuwaiti background is more predominant than in your artwork than the Ukrainian, and the Ukrainian one gets a tiny bit overshadowed. However, where do you think or feel that the two sides of yours find their own expression?
So I think that my Ukrainian side is the basis of everything, because it allows me to take a bird's eyes view on the specific topics that I talk about in my work, in traditions and rituals in Kuwait, and it kind of influenced the way I see things. So I can share a screen to show you something. So yeah, as a child born in Ukraine, I was exposed to a lot of fairy tales and a lot of Russian cartoons, and they were mainly talking about love, and that was like the main thing that I was thinking about as a child, and you can see it in my childhood drawings actually. So it influenced definitely my perception of love and my perception of luxury. So there is this simplicity of love and two people being in love and getting married, versus the pressure of the display for this love. You know what I mean? So yeah, it definitely influenced how I see things and everything that I do actually. So I don't think it's overshadowed.
Let's say it's more subtle, and it says it's not visible because the dowry doesn't belong to the Ukrainian heritage that you have, the legacy that you got from your mom's side, but at the same time it's innerly rooted and grounded in the topic that you deal with, which is love. And it's surprising because you were saying that you were raised in that particular social and cultural context, and then everything was about love and fairy tale, and also your first drawings, which were, by the way, very much avant-garde for being a kid, making drawing, but also this kind of concept of fairy tale, which comes down to the wedding in Kuwait, and we saw the little video that you shared with us, that tends to be very overly opulent, super fancy and lavish. So I think that this fairy tale gets to a point that it becomes a reality. So it's like a dream come true moment in all the senses. And I really like the fact that at the end you decided to summarize with those two sentences: the perception of love and the perception of luxury merges together. They merge and they get combined together.
Yes.
Wow. Oh wow, we are already running out of time. but we are on time at the end of at the same time. So thanks so much, Amani, for this compelling presentation. That was very quick, but it was an overall, all-encompassing view, and with a very closer view with a magnifying lenses into your practice. And
as well.
so the Q&A is open. Whoever wants to send their questions via the chat, just type it down, or eventually, if you're not shy, what we always ask is to unmute yourself, take your mic, and ask your question. Then we can open the chat now. We go, oh yes, people are saying congratulations, we miss you. We also had an international conference tonight because we have a friend of yours, is also an artist, Farah from Chicago. We have Zara Marwan, who partook with us in the conversation in June, and was with you also the residency program. There are no real questions being typed, and I'm going to ask you the last question at this point. That wants to somewhat to close this circle, since we started talking about the year program at the center. Have you ever experienced any other residency program after the center, or what kind of other experiences for air programs around the world you have to make a comparison?
No, actually, nothing happened from after this air program, and yeah, it was actually something that I really missed, and especially being around my friends, the artists, it was such a wonderful experience here in Kuwait.
Yes, if I may say, I was so surprised because when I joined the center a year ago, more or less, you were almost done with your residency program, although we met in Venice for the exhibition where you showed the first experiments with the dowry, including the luxury brands like Gucci and Chanel. And it was, for me, a novelty to get to know your work without knowing you in person. But when we were talking about your program, actually you said something that to me was really out of question, because I never, ever thought about the perception of an air program like the one that you got. Which means that when I asked you how the year program was for you in Kuwait for almost a year at the center, you said that compared to the other artists that benefited very much about the art community, the exchange of ideas and thoughts that they were able to do just in that precise context. For you, the year program at the center was the best place to isolate yourself, because you were like coming back from London, and upon your arrival to Kuwait, you needed to have like a sacred space where you could completely shut down with everything that was outside.
To process. Yeah, it was very intense, because when I came back, I got pregnant, but then also being faced with the social obligations as well back in Kuwait, it was very intense. And then also reintroducing myself to the art scene, and what I missed in 2 years. So catching up with everyone, catching up with the other artists, meeting the artists who were with me in the air program. So yeah, it was perfect time to get isolated, but also connect to a lot of people.
Yeah, but I think that you crossed 3 important steps, and then we have an interesting question that is going to close the talk, the conversation tonight. My point is that it was interesting on a geographical level, because you were in London with your you were preparing your thesis at Godless College, and it was all about a Kuwaiti culture and the dowry, the daza, and you needed to be very didactic to introduce what the daza was to a foreigner and international audience. And then you came back to Kuwait. You had the residency program with us, and then talking about daza was kind of very common, and also people maybe were not even interested because for them it was so ordinary, right? But then at the point, there was the exhibition in Venice, which was on a statement, Kuwaiti representation of the center in Venice in such an international context. So there was kind of a protected area, which was the exhibition Kuwait-based and made, but on a showcasing level that was completely international. That reception of that exhibition actually was midway between being completely aloof, distant from the topic, but also intimately related and connected. I think that it was exactly the merging point of the two. So let's go to the question, which is very, very interesting. This is Vibe saying, my question is, do you feel that the DASA pieces being sold would inherently become counterproductive to your original idea of it, being a sort of criticism to the said practice?
So my criticism is not on the tradition itself. I am instead celebrating this tradition and kind of like having a conversation with it on a daily basis. But I mean, for me, the most important thing is that when you consume an object such as that, it becomes an item of value. So you don't throw it out after the event, and then it becomes something that is precious, that can be kept from generation to generation, and that can be an art piece that you appreciate and value. It is also a sentimental piece for the bride. But the important thing is that you know how to consume and what to consume. Something that is of high value, something that is local, something that is really well thought of. So for me, it's a matter of choice. And luxury has always been there, you know. So there is a misconception that in the old days, there's no such thing, but no, actually, it just changed throughout time. So the perceptions, what people consider of high value and of luxury changed throughout time. So for me, it's going back to what's important. So because after modernism, we became less and less attached to objects, and objects became very replaceable. So for me, when DASA displays such an importance, it's very important because of the ritual, the history of it. It should become a piece of importance and not something that is discarded after. So for me, that's the main point. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, if I can rephrase it somehow from a curatorial perspective, I would say that your process, your creative process, follows three important steps. The first one is documenting and observing, so what's going on. Then there is the celebration in the moment that you put it into practice, but also with the product is a transformation, because you're trying to shape some general common sense here in Kuwait about the DASA. So yeah. If this is part of our tradition, we're gonna use DASA forever, right? That's gonna change for sure. There will be another step, another evolution, but at the same time, the DASA remains the same. What changes is the approach of the DASA. Instead of being sold to the consumer society with brands, but to give back that meaning, the preciousness, the uniqueness that you were talking about before. So it's transformative at the end.
And it is, of course, I am my biggest critic, and I want to reach, the stage where it really becomes, an art piece. So it is something that I am working towards, of course.
That's true. That's true. We had again another series of very interesting comments. Thank you so much for your appreciation. Diana Marcela Mosquera is saying interesting words. Thank you for sharing the vision of the young artists in Kuwait. Yes, this is actually the purpose, the aim of the Artist Talk series. Thanks for saying that. So we are there. We are about to close, and Again, thank you so much for your participation, Amani, and for sharing this compelling conversation with us. Thank you, all of you participants, for being so active in the chat and supportive also on of Amani's work. The new series of the artist talk, we see painter Hamid Mukim from Kuwait on September the 22nd, and we close the second season of this initiative. But anyway, follow us on social media for other events and talks that are hosted by the Sheikh Abdullah Sandler Center. And Amani, how people can get in touch with you? Instagram profile or whatever other channels to reach you and Daza Lab.
So should I write it in the comments maybe?
Your Instagram profile is there, Amani AlThuwaini. Very easy.
My email address. Oops. And then, yes, that's me. Thank you everyone for joining. I enjoyed this.
Yes. Have a good night, everyone.
I hope to see you in real life soon.
That's true. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much once again.